Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel Growing with God. Today, we're answering another question, and that question is, why did the apostles suffer? So if we read the book of Acts and the letters written by some of the other apostles that we know, we'll see various accounts and instances of their suffering. For example, if we take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 23 to 28, we see how St. Paul was beaten with rods, stoned, and attacked by other people in the city. And then we also can't forget the example of Stephen. He was stoned to death while preaching. But whatever apostle you look at, they were probably in some way suffering for their work, and they all risked their lives to spread the gospel and the message of Christ, according to Revelation chapter 12 verse 11. This verse reads, "And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death." But the question is, why would God even let people suffer like this? Well, I've come up with 3 reasons as why this happens, and in this video I'd like to explain to you what those 3 reasons are, and feel free to pause the video and make any comments you might have, as I'd like to discuss this further with anyone else who is, interested in the subject. But anyway, the first reason why I think the apostles suffered is because they were preaching something that sort of went against the previous system that was already set up. In Israel, there had already been a system running for many years, headed by the Pharisees, scribes, and elders that we know in the Bible today. And this system was based on the laws of Moses from before. However, the apostles were preaching about a man who they had already rejected from society. And so the Jewish leaders wanted to destroy them for this because their gospel threatened their authority as Jewish leaders. Humans usually like to stick to the things that they're used to. So once they saw a certain group of people trying to challenge the position that they have held for so long, they weren't going to let that happen. But anyway, another reason why the apostles suffered is because of their confidence. They were standing for their faith, as anyone who wants to stand for what they believe in will suffer in some way. But of course, if any of you have been in a history class, you'll probably know that it is not just Christians who face this kind of persecution for standing what they believe in, but many people fighting for freedom in America and Europe like this also suffered. People like, Rosa Parks, that is very popular today, and others went to jail and suffered for what they believe in. And then on the other hand, you'll see Paul saying that there are many people around him who didn't face this kind of suffering and persecution because they weren't standing for their faith. As it was said in Galatians chapter 6 verse 12, he said here, "As many as desire to make a fair show in the flesh, they constrain you to be circumcised, only lest they should suffer persecution for the cross of Christ." But of course the question is, why do people persecute those who stand for their beliefs? Well, it's because they feel attacked and powerless if they don't react and do something. And many people also might, feel threatened by you because they are worried that your courage and determination will recruit others so that they have to fight and maintain their own position. In fact, the Bible tells us that this was exactly what the Pharisees were feeling about Christ and his followers. In John chapter 11 verse 48, it says here, "If we let him thus alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation." So that's the second reason. But finally, the third reason why I think the apostles suffered so much is because they also were suffering in lieu of the reward that they would receive in heaven. The reward mentioned in John chapter 14 verses 1 to 3 and Philippians chapter 3 verses 20 and 21. They would be given immortality in heaven, as Jesus Christ and God have already had. But for them to actually receive this kind of reward, they have to suffer to the very end. This is because immortality is actually a self-sustaining life, which actually kind of means that God cannot kill you. So for God to grant them this kind of big reward, they have to prove themselves with suffering up until their very own death. But we have to keep in mind that this suffering is not just for the apostles, but also for us too, because we will face troubles as well, as 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 12 says. However, I think we should learn from the example of the apostles in Acts chapter 5, who didn't lose faith in God when there was suffering and persecution came, but instead were proud to suffer for God. I'll round off with St. James' words in James chapter 1 verses 2 to 4, where he advised that we should have the same feeling about God. "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience." But anyway, I think I can stop here on answering the question, why did the apostles suffer? It's for 3 reasons. 1, it was because they were preaching something that went against the previously set up system. And 2, it was also because they were standing for their faith and they were courageous about it. And 3, they were suffering in lieu of the reward that they would get later in heaven. But anyway, like I always say, I'd appreciate it a lot if you hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. And so you know when we come out with a new Growing with God video, you can hit that notification bell. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.